This is a Comet First Use Guide legume. The purpose of this legume is to quickly take a new Comet user to a point where they're comfortably exploring Comet on their own. Another way to think about that is you have a new Comet user. It will take some amount of time to become comfortable. We're really just trying to reduce that time to get someone comfortable more quickly. What is Comet? Comet is it's a product simulation infrastructure. It manages both the flow of the data in the process, and it manages the files that are used. In creating the simulations, Comet can access both commercial off-the-shelf simulation applications as well as in-house proprietary software. It's good to understand the architecture of Comet before you try to use it. First of all, of course, Comet is in the center, and there are direct users of Comet, which we'll be showing in these examples that we're doing here. There is also the concept of product simulation templates, where a specific product is templatized, and then template users provide parameters for that product. They may also do some direct use of Comet in that case. Comet uses a standard file system for storing its data. Comet relies on adapters that are either Comet supplied or custom supplied. The adapters connect Comet to commercial applications and to in-house applications. On the developer side, there are of course the Comet developers that do the Comet development. For product simulation templates, Comet in-house and third-party developers do the template development. And for the adapters, Comet and in-house developers do the adapter development. Well, let's get started. We're going to walk through about 5, 6, 7 steps here of getting started. We'll just dive right in. The first thing we're going to do is start Comet. Comet is a normal Windows app, and we're going to use the normal Windows app start technique. So we'll do that by doing a start, all programs, Comet. And you'll see a splash screen that comes up, and then Comet will be up ready for use. Now we'll see. You'll see a very not complicated necessarily, but very thorough window here, and we're not going to be exploring all of that. But it's good to know that this is out there. So here we have our window here, and Comet execution looks pretty much like this one. So the first thing we want to do is check the version. So we use normal Windows techniques to do that. Help about, showing the version you're running. So help about, and this shows us the Comet version, and sure enough the version we're using is the same one that is documented here. Now we're going to save our initial project, and again, normal window techniques are going to do that. We're going to File, Save As. We're going to specify a location, so in this case we're going to use the desktop, and then we're going to give it a specific project name. We're going to call this Project First Use. So let's go over to our Comet window. We'll do a File, Save As. Specify the desktop as our location, and we'll call this Comet First Use, and do a save. And what I want to do is take just a moment to look at what happened to our desktop when we did that. If we go over there, we see we have two things. We have the Comet First Use folder and the Comet First Use project file. If we look quickly at the folder, you'll see that what you have in there is you have a bunch of stuff, basically. Now, what's important about this is Comet maintains this folder for you, and this is where it puts all the data. Everything related that Comet is managing for you goes in this folder. Now, you should never really access this folder. Certainly, there's no intent to and little need to, and certainly you should not make changes. But if you do and you make changes, you're highly likely to create irrecoverable damage. So again, you might want to go look at that, but don't change anything there. The important thing is the Comet file. So we saved and restart. We're saved in project. Now we're doing exit and restart. Again, the standard Windows techniques are going to be used. We're going to do a file exit, and then we're going to go to our desktop and double-click the project file. And we have our Comet splash screen again. And Comet comes up running. So after Comet is up and running, we've completed our basic startup. Well, I do want to take a moment to look at the quick start information that's available, the documentation information that's available. So we're going to help, quick start, explore concepts, and that brings up the documentation. And you can scroll through that. A couple things to note. Here's the table of contents. And pay a particular attention to the last page. Units are very important in Comet. And if you ever wonder what abbreviations Comet's going to be using for units, you can go to the last page of this quick start guide, and they'll tell you about it there. There's a variety of other information in the quick start guide, and certainly we're just going to be touching on a very, very minuscule part of the power of Comet, and you'll want to go to the quick start guide even for the stuff that we're touching on here and look up the details of what we're talking about. So that gets us started. Now let's jump right into example 1. Example 1 is going to be a really easy simulation. We're going to make output equal to input. So we have a series of input numbers, and we want to make, when we do our simulation, we want the output to equal input. So that's a pretty trivial example, but it does expose us to what we need to know to start learning Comet. So we're going to run through these steps here, and we'll run through them in the Comet window here just to show you exactly what we're doing. The first suggestion is that we adjust the environment, and by that I mean Comet has a lot of stuff that we're not going to be using in this example, and so a suggestion here is we go to View, and we turn off a bunch of stuff. So we turn off the Physical Model tab, turn off the Constructors tab, Physical Model tab, turn off the Constructors tab, turn off the Environment tab, turn off the Miscellaneous Data tab. And you'll see that leaves us with two tabs remaining, Root, or Project, and Process, and that's where we want to be. So that gives us our environment. The next step that we're going to do is unlock the keyboard, or the dashboard, I mean. So dashboard is where we're going to define our input and look at our output. But before we can do anything there, we need to unlock it. And so the way you unlock the dashboard is click on the Unlock icon. So we'll do that. And sure enough, it unlocks. And now you see we have the possibility for entering different variables on the dashboard. So we've done that, and note here that this indicates that the dashboard is unlocked. And again, if you go back to the jump start stuff, you'll be able to figure out, the quick start stuff, you'll be able to figure out more about the lock and how important that is in Comet, the dashboard lock. Now we're going to create our input and output. Remember, we have input equal to output, and so we want to create these variables. And so we're going to do, it says to go to the variable and create an input, example 1 input, and click the plus sign, and same thing in metric for output to get the example output. So let's go over here. We're going to type the name example 1 input, and we'll hit the plus sign, and that adds that variable. And over in metrics, we're going to do example 1. Output, and do a plus sign there. So now we have our input and output dashboard information defined. Now we're going to, next thing it says we want to do is add a stage. Project stages are fundamental organizing principle in Comet, and we're going to be adding a new stage to put our data for this example. And so it says project, root, right mouse, new stage, and then enter a stage name. Now remember we had these two tabs here. The tab you want to be in is the project tab. We're going to do a right mouse on the root and do a new stage. And we're going to enter our example 1 as our stage name. And now you'll see that we have a stage hierarchy here. Example 1 is one layer under the root. And also note that we have this yellow arrow here, this little arrow. This indicates that this is the current currently active stage in the product tree. So now we have our stage defined. Now we want to go over to the process. Next thing we're going to do is start working on our process, and we're going to do that in the process schematic. So we need to go to the process tab, right mouse on the process, and do display schematic. So let's see if we can do that. Process, right mouse, display schematic, and sure enough, there's our schematic is displayed out there. So we got that step accomplished, displaying the schematic. Now we need to create some input and output, and we're going to do that on the schematic by right mouse, new, and process input port and output port. So let's do that. So we're going to do a right mouse, new, input port, and a right mouse, new, output port, process output port. And then it suggests here that we move them around to like we want them. So we'll move those around, and they do some nice movement for you there. And there we go. We have process input and output defined. And we have that like we want it. So we've got those inputs and outputs defined. Now we've created the process inputs and output. Now we have to connect the input to the process input. And this is pretty easy. You drag and drop this input variable over to this input, into input 1 on the process tree. So we grab this, drag it up, and put it there. And what happens is you'll note that there's also a little blue star that appears out here. So we know that our input is in fact connected. Now we're going to connect the process output to the dashboard output. You see this is a little trickier, but we can work through it. The first thing it says to do is double click the output variable. So let's go over here and do that, the 0 that's out there. So double click that. All right. And now it wants us to click this little more or ellipsis icon there. So we'll click that. And we'll see we get this display here. And now it says use the keyboard to delete the 0. So let's go over and do that. Click on that field and just delete that guy. right? And that gives us a window that looks like this window here, looks like this one here. And now it wants us to drag and drop the process 1 output in the dashboard output field to the open data entry. And so now we're going to take this output and we're going to drop it, drag and drop it into this field here. And sure enough, that's what you've got there. Now this continues on our next page. So far we have what we want here. And now it suggests that with the output field just entered, it's highlighted, double-click the contain entry. So let's go back over here. We see this field is highlighted like we want it to be, and we're going to double-click on contained entity. And sure enough, that creates something that looks a whole lot like this. So there we go. Now we're going to click OK. And sure enough, we have our output defined, and it looks something like that. Now, when you're doing this, you're likely to encounter some common problems, or at least I did. And the first thing it might have, these all end up in syntax errors. But if you don't delete that 0 like I ask you to, then you get a syntax error. And so, because your output field will look like that, it doesn't like that. Also, if you did not have that field highlighted, remember that we wanted this field highlighted when you click when you did this double click out here. Well, if you don't do that, that's not highlighted. You'll get something that looks like this. The contained entity will be down here. It might be up at the beginning with this parentheses here. Also a syntax error. There are a variety of other things you can do to do that to get this wrong. And you can cancel out instead of clicking OK. If you cancel here, you can start over for this part of the process. And anyway, what you're looking for is this. This is what it's supposed to look like, and you can hand type that in if you really feel you need to do that. But that takes care of getting the output process output connected to the dashboard output. Well, now we're ready to go back to the process, and we want to take the process schematic and we want to connect the input to the output. The way you do that is you do a drag in 2 steps. You do a drag and drop of the input to the output. When you do that, you'll get some other stuff you need to do. So let's start to do that. So we're going to go over here. We're going to do a drag this output, or the port on the input, to the output port. And sure enough, you get a little dashed line there like that shows. And you get this this data bus, I think. And now it wants us to take the data bus and drop the input to the output on the data bus. So we'll do that. And lo and behold, we've got that done, and then it shows this little connection here. And this now shows a solid line instead of a dashed line. So we've successfully connected our input to the output. And now we're ready to run our cases. So let's see what that's all about. Well, first of all, it says we need to be looking at the project dashboard. Well, we're not, and so the way you fix that is you go over here and you click Product Dashboard, and sure enough, there it is. And now we're going to define a stage for each of our cases, and the stages are going to be, we want them to be children of example 1. And so the way you do that, we'll go back to our Process tab, as it says here, and we're going to click on New Example 1, right mouse, New Stage, we'll call this stage Case 1. Okay. And sure enough, Case 1 is out there now. What does it want us to do? We entered the stage name. It wants us to double-click the input value and enter the value. Well, we're going to double-click this. We're going to enter 100, which was our Case 1 input value. And now we have that defined. Now it wants us to right mouse on the project schematic and do Run. Right mouse, Run. It does a bunch of stuff for us. And sure enough, look at that. The output is equal to the input. Pretty cool, huh? Well, it wants us to repeat this for each case. So we'll go back up here to example 1. We'll right mouse, New Stage, Case 2. Okay. enter the input variable, 200. Right mouse, run. And note we have our output defined. But back to example 1. Right mouse, new stage, case 3. Okay. We got that case defined. Now we're going to go back to define our input variable, which is 300. And we're going to run that case. And sure enough, we have 300 out there. And so repeat that for each case. Well, we're done, except that I want to talk about some common problems you might encounter when you're doing this. These are things that happened to me the first time I did it. First thing that might happen is you have a blank. You don't have your process. You want it to look like this because you can't run anything. If it looks like this, even though you have this variable as undefined, the problem there is that you've probably made the parent of case 1 the root instead of example 1. And so you need to, the case needs to be a child of example 1. So your solution is you're going to delete that bad stage, you're going to create it again. You're going to encounter another problem when you do that. We'll get to that in a minute. But the learnings from this problem are that processes are associated with stages, and so that's something that's important to note. Stages inherit processes from the parent. So when we created case 1, it inherited its processes from example 1. Dashboard variables don't belong to any stages. So regardless of where you are up here, if you're even in the root, these variables are out there. But and you'll see we're going to talk about more about that in a minute about other properties of variables. But let's go on to the there's no delete on the drop down here. So you're ready. You say, hey, I created a bad stage. I need to delete it. What do I do? Well, I click here and I do right mouse, and there's no delete. What's up with that? Well, the problem with that is the stage that you're trying to delete is the current active stage. See the little yellow arrow there. So the solution is to make another stage current. The way you do that is right mouse, another stage, move to stage, and then you attempt to delete the bad stage. So again, learnings here, the yellow arrow indicates the current active stage. You can't delete the current active stage, and you learned that right mouse moves to stage is how you move to other stages. The final problem that I'd like to talk about is this business about I got to the point where I was ready to enter input, and this was supposed to be undefined, but there was a number there. And what's up with that? Well, the problem there most likely is that the case is a child of a previous case instead of example 1. And so here, for example, I made the parent of case 2 as case 1 when it's really supposed to be example 1. So again, you need to delete that bad stage and then create it again. Another thing to note while you're doing this, though, is we noted that the dashboard variables don't belong to any particular stage, but in fact, the values of the variables are associated with stages. And so these variables then will get passed on from one stage to another, but the values get passed on too. But they really belong to a particular stage. And so, variables are part of the project, but the variable values are associated with stages. Okay, well, we've run the examples. Now let's look at our results to verify what we got. And the way we do that is we right mouse, move to stage, check the results, and repeat that for each case. So let's go to case 1, right mouse, move to stage, and then we're going to check the variables after we've done that. And sure enough, input, output, right mouse, case 2, move to stage. Output is 200, input is 200, right mouse, move to stage. Stage 3, the input variable is 300 and the output is 300. So sure enough, we've done exactly what we wanted to do there, so we're satisfied that our simulation is complete. And now we just want to do some wrap-up steps. what we want to do is we want to do a file, save, exit, and then we're going to do a restart and then observe a couple things about that. So let's do a file, save, file, exit. Okay, so Comet goes away. And now we're going to go over here and we'll double click the project file. And Comet is going to start for us. And what we're going to note here is we're going to note that, and when it comes up, that these the stages are all the example, and that stages are all there. There's root, and there's the three stages under example 1. Current stage, however, is set to root, not one of these other stages we were looking at. There's just these 2 left tabs are displayed, so that hasn't changed. However, the process schematic is not displayed, so we click on that. Sure enough, there's no process schematic out there, so we want to look at that. We need to do a process display schematic. We also note that the project dashboard is locked, and so if we want to do anything with that, we'll need to unlock the project dashboard. Okay, so I just wanted to point those things out to you as we wrap up simulation 1, or example 1. Well, that pretty much wraps up example 1. We did successfully do output equals input, and we did our 3 cases. Going back now to our first use guide, we successfully wrapped up example 1. Well, I hope you have found this Comet First Use Guide helpful as you dive into Comet. Hopefully it'll shorten the time required to become a confident Comet Explorer. The home page for the Comet First Use Guide is www.legiumtech.com/cmtfug.